I want. I turn a business out of nothing into something I love. I got a poker face, but honestly, I'm not one to bluff. I flip a switch, never miss, man, I always stay up. Don't let them see you, bitch, always have a plan to stay tough. This life ahead of you ain't easy, it was built to be rough. But that's what makes a personality, is tragedy, bruh. So keep your head on your shoulders. Now we ain't out here moving rocks, we out here moving boulders. Now we ain't getting posterized, we out here making posters. And we ain't got nothing to hide, we move forward like soldiers. You better wake up for the pay stub, or you'll pay up. Don't make love to the game, bruh, fuck the game up. Change up, rearrange stuff to your greatness. Same us for the way up, play the game, bruh.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top, yeah.
You know I'm always honest, there ain't no way I'm ever stopping.
I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top,
I'm always flirting with pain, she like to hurt me and maim. I'm always working to change, but she's still lurking the same. I keep on building a dynasty while the haters be trying me. But they hate from inside, you see, hate themselves in society. So I let them speak quietly while my actions speak wider. See, they be hiding in privacy with the screen. Oh, the irony to hate someone who's trying to be whatever they would like to be. We all feel the anxiety, we make our own rivalries. Yo, so where is all the positivity? I feel like we all just hate on everything, it's killing me. Thoughts build quick, causing different possibilities. Negative thoughts will cause different disabilities. So do better, work hard under pressure. If you got no time, work smarter than ever. Don't ever let them tell you that you can't never say never. And turn your mind into the truest of go-getters.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top, yeah.
You know I'm always honest.
Is Philip Jones, kidney recipient, wonderful group of amazing individuals with a wonderful dynamic story. But we're going to go ahead and start. Shirley Brill. Shirley, go ahead and introduce yourself for us, please.
Hi, I'm Shirley Brill. I'm the recipient of a double lung transplant. May of this year, it will be 15 years.
Awesome. So congratulations on that. 15 years is a big milestone. My co-host who would do beards for our cookies just done 15 years as well. So let's start here. So I was reading and want to know. So in the beginning, you said you're dealing with breathing issues. Those original signs and symptoms that you ignored.
The main symptom that I had was shortness of breath. During the time when I was originally sick, I was an elementary school teacher, and my classroom was the last door on the left upstairs. And it was really not a problem going up and down the stairs with the kids, going to lunch, going to different resources. But I noticed that I started getting short of breath, going up and down the stairs, walking the hallway, things like that. And at first I thought maybe, well, perhaps I had picked up a couple of pounds or something like that. But I noticed that the symptoms were not going away. And even worse, it seems like they were getting worse. And the distances that I walk, it would become even shorter when I would start breathing heavy, until one day I just said, if this continues to happen, then I would just go to the emergency room to get it checked out.
Right. So how does this type of situation take a toll on a fifth grade teacher? Because I'm in school, so I know, elementary school level, middle school, high school level, the things you have to do. What take on you being in that position?
Well, it took a drastic toll on me, because with fifth graders, they are active, they're moving. At that time, they had resources to go to, and of course, the teacher had to escort them there. Then you go back to your classroom, so that's 3 more trips up and down the stairs. So I noticed I started to try to cover up the obvious, and instead of going back to my classroom, I just kind of stay close to where they were. But like I said, it got to a point where I couldn't cover anymore. And then when you get so short of breath, sometimes you know how you just prop up on the wall and just, well, it got to
Yeah.
that point where it couldn't be covered up anymore. And not just there at school, it was everywhere. And like I said, I couldn't put off getting um, medical advice as to what was going on. So once I went to the emergency room, they ran a couple of tests and then referred me to just go back to your. They did notice that my oxygen level was dropping. And I think that was the key because when I did my follow up with my primary care doctor, the first thing he did, and I attributed a lot of the success of my health to him prescribing oxygen for me. Because I think if he didn't do that immediately, I probably would have run into more problems. So once I got on the oxygen, referred to a pulmonologist, still wasn't getting better. And then I was on the road to a transplant after a second opinion. Because for me, there was always denial. You hear conversations about transplants, but you really don't know what it is. And for someone to say the only thing that's going to help you will be a lung transplant. So I threw my head back and surely you don't know what you're talking about. But he absolutely did. And that's what saved my life. That double lung transplant.
I'm definitely glad you went when you did. See, just be, those hairs on the back of our neck stand up at certain points in times that we need to listen and pay attention to those times. So what was the original diagnosis? What did the pulmonologist say when you went to go see him or her?
The original diagnosis was interstitial lung disease. Um, the diagnosis that got me on the transplant list was idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, which is basically the scarring of the tissues of the lung. And the idiopathic means that it's unknown what caused it. Because actually, I was fine one day. And I think that was a plus for me when I was being evaluated for my transplant. That was the only thing wrong with me. Other than that, I was in good health. So after I got that second opinion, the second opinion is what led me to transplant evaluation at Mayo.
Sorry, go ahead, continue.
Oh, okay. So after I was listed, and this started, I didn't mention, but this started in 2005. So I was actually sick for 3 years. January of 2008, I was diagnosed with end-stage lung disease. It was not until that end-stage lung disease that I was placed on the transplant wait list. And I think you have to get to that point. But in between, there was a lot of sickness. At first, it was minor, but I started out on 2 liters of oxygen. And by the time I was listed, I was up to 15 liters of oxygen. So eventually, I had to stop teaching. And I was just sitting at home waiting on my call, praying for a solution or for those lungs to come through for me. Of course, as a recipient, I think everybody struggles with, well, for me, for lungs, you struggle with, somebody has to pass in order for you to receive the gift. It's not like kidneys because you can get a living donor or you can go on dialysis. But for lung recipients, that somebody has to pay the ultimate price. They're going to pass on. And they've said yes to the gift of life. And that's what's going to save your life. In between, like I said, there was a lot of sickness. It got to the point where I was in the hospital frequently. My left lung collapsed twice. There were, like the song, there were more bad days than good days. But God came through for me on May 5th when I received that call that we have some lungs for you, My surgery was completed on May 6th. I originally went in for one lung,
Wow.
but this is where God really blessed me
Mm-hmm.
and gave me two.
Wow.
So let's step back for a
Shall I
second.
continue?
How did the progression
I continue.
how of your breathing go up until the point of being placed on the transplant list? Was it bad towards rapidly, or did it gradually worse?
They were treating it very aggressively. At first, like I said, I started out um, with 2 liters of oxygen. And that was pretty good for a while. And a lot of people I know, when they prescribed the oxygen for me, now all of a sudden I have to walk around with an oxygen tank attached to my shoulder. And I think everybody kind of, oh Lord, not everybody knows I have a problem. But guess what? When you can't breathe, I had no problem carrying that on my shoulder because I thought that was going to fix the problem, number one. Oh, well, all I got to do is walk around with a little oxygen tank and I'm fine. But like I said, it was an aggressive disease and it gradually got worse, worse, worse. And within 3 years, I was at death's door. And anybody else who faces idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, there's no cure for it. A transplant is actually just a treatment. So, like I said, there was a lot of sickness in between. Not only I progressed from the little shoulder tank, the cute little shoulder tank, to the big green tanks. And those are the tanks that you see people pulling around, although they've come up with some better ones
Mm-hmm.
now. But everywhere I went, I had the big green tanks, had them in my classroom, had them in the trunk of my car, had them at church. Anywhere I went, I was attached to that oxygen. And also at home, I had concentrators, had a concentrator in my classroom. I had the big 50-pound tanks in my home. So it was just oxygen, oxygen. I was dependent on it to breathe. And I think most
Mm-hmm.
people don't realize that just to raise your hand, that will take away from you if your oxygen is not flowing right. And without it, without the oxygen, it does more damage to your heart. So if you're out there and someone has prescribed that oxygen for you, please wear it. Don't be embarrassed. Put your oxygen on because you want to reserve your health as much as you can.
Right. So it says you lost nine, and this is spectacular because I know there are probably stories out there, but you don't hear too many of them. It said you had to lose up to 90 pounds before your transplant. What did diet look like in order to make that happen?
It looked like a lot of hard work, but I'd have to say that Mayo helped me to get it off. I had to go into rehab. I was on the treadmill every day. I had to change my diet. But when it's a life and death situation, guess what? You do whatever is necessary if you want to live to get it off. And I would say it took maybe about a little less than a year to get it off. But this was constant working out, at least 4 to 5 days a week. And I did not qualify to get that transplant until I got the weight off. So that was the motivation.
Yeah, no, that I mean that is definitely something that can keep you motivated when you're trying to achieve something. Uh, so January 2000, you got placed on the list, and on May 5th, while watching probably one of the greatest game shows ever, which is The Price is Right, you received the call. What are your emotions when you get that call? I don't know if you sit in the living room, sitting in your room, or whatever, but you get that call. I know But we know how that feels. What were how your emotions going at this time?
Well, I was really kind of calm about it, believe it or not. At my church, we actually have a transplant community there, and we were all kind of talking together. And a kidney recipient who's now passed on, but she told me, well, my first call, it really didn't work. It was like a dry run. So I guess I had programmed that in my head. Oh, I got the call. It'll be okay. And I went on to put on matching up my clothes to go work out. And it just so happened that my daughter was in town. She had left and she was heading back to Memphis. She forgot her camera and she had to come back. And while she was over in the other room, that's when the call came through. Like you said, I'll never forget it because I was looking at the prices right, kick back, enjoying myself, and received that call. And I told her, I said, I think that's the call. They told me to come to the hospital. They have some lungs. So she looked at me because I was still sitting there. And I really was taking my time. And the funny thing about it is I called my friends. I said, well, I got my call. I got my call. So, how we do. Everybody started calling, Shirley's on her way to the hospital. All of them beat me to the hospital. So when I finally got there, of course, we found out that it was a go. It was the real deal.
That's awesome. I honestly wish I would have had that. My experience is somewhat not even really somewhat similar. I might call on a Sunday, and I just feel like that was just a complete blessing for it to come on a Sunday. Even after I just came from church, I was chilling in my room, and I remember my pastor, he said, "Well, how long do you have to get there?" He said, "Get here, but we don't have to rush." He drove about 20 miles per hour all the way to LA, trying to get there in point 0.5 seconds. I'm like, slow down. I want to make it there, young man. Let's get there, and then you can get excited. But no, that's a great story. Um, so what's support like getting through your transplant recovery?
I had a very strong support team. My daughters, unfortunately, were living out of town, and I had one son. He was here in Jacksonville with me. I had support from my church family. I had very good friends who ended up being caregivers for me, and I can't thank them enough. Hopefully, they're listening today. And I wanted to put a plug in to let people know that caregivers are very important people because there's
Mm.
no way that I could do pretty good by myself before the transplant because once I was attached to that oxygen, I was good. But once I received my transplant, the first thing is the unbelief that now my life had been restored. It was kind of unbelievable because within those 3 years, our body seems to adjust to whatever we're going through. So I was quite accustomed to just oxygen was just another part of me. It was on my shoulder, I was pulling it or whatever the case may be. But to now wake up from surgery, there was oxygen, I had it on. And then when they came to take it off, I was a little leery because, well, what are you doing? Miss Brill,
Mm,
you don't need that anymore.
mm.
And like I said, I found that hard to
Right.
believe. And so did my friends. But, this is what you went through all of this for. And like I said, God has blessed me. I have
Yeah.
not been admitted back to the hospital within this time since I had my transplant, which has been about 15 years. So I got
Wow.
a good set of lungs. The transplant worked for me, and I am blessed.
Yes, you are. That is for sure. Well, before I get to Jen, Brenda, and George, we're gonna go to a quick commercial.
My phone number is 30.
Chance. We're gonna jump straight in here. So I would just real quick. I have questions for the three of you all to answer. Get into them individually. But if you can, Georgia, Brenda, remind everybody what kind of transplant you had, where you had it, when you had it, Jan, your connection to transplant, please. We can start with Brenda.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brenda Jackson Darling. I am a past kidney transplant recipient, and mine was from a living donor in 2012. That kidney ultimately failed, and now I am on dialysis.
Sorry to hear that. I'm right with you. I'm in the same boat, so I understand what you're going through. Mr. Frank, how are you, sir?
I'm good, and I apologize for having to leave. It was going to be a difficult day for me. I'm good. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good, sir.
Hello?
Why don't you go ahead and let everybody know,
Oh,
what transplant you had and where you had it, how long ago?
all right. I had my first transplant in April of 1975. That was after 3 years of hemodialysis at the GW University Medical Center in DC. At the time, we had to go for 6 hours each day, 3 days a week. So there was no 3.5 and 4.5 hours that people tend to go for now. They've made a lot of advancements in the coil, apparently, and that's about it. That first transplant never worked, and they took it out, I think 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later. I stayed on dialysis until November 4th when I got the call again. I got the beeper, because at the time we had pagers. And that kidney is still functioning 47 years, 2 months, and a few days. Hello?
That's awesome. Awesome. Jan, how are you?
Hi. Well, I'm a tissue recipient myself, and but most importantly, I'm a very proud donor wife. My husband Paul died just a little over 5 years ago, and he was a cornea and tissue donor. His corneas restored eyesight to 2 women, and of his skin, bone, tendon, and nerve tissues, there are about 125 grafts or surgeries, transplants from those. And so they have improved the lives of dozens of people all over the country. And I think one in Canada. And so I am the recipient of bone tissue in my finger and tendon in both my thumb joints when I had replacements done.
Okay. Maybe I didn't get to that part of the story when when I read it. So that was learn something new every day. Um, my next question for all of you is, um, what drew you to EMAT, and what would you look forward to accomplishing with this organization?
I'll go. I'll go. What drew me to EMAT was I am currently, as I said, my living donor kidney failed in 2019, and I'm a little bit unique in the sense that I've done the full spectrum of dialysis or the kidney experience. I'm a former dialysis nurse. I had a living donor kidney in 2012 that ultimately failed, as I said, in 2019. I've done peritoneal dialysis, and now I've had to transition to hemodialysis. And I'm currently listed for a new kidney at Mayo in Jacksonville. But I'm also on a quest for a new living donor and looking for that someone who would be willing to say yes to make a difference again in my life and willing to give me a new gift of life. But I saw EMAT on Facebook and I thought, wow, this seems to be an amazing organization. And I reached out to Shirley, wanted to join the organization. And once I did, I have just been amazed at the difference that they're making in people's lives. What a dynamic group this is, the participation that they have in the group, their members, how active they are, with events that they put on. It's just been amazing to be a member of this, and I'm such a proud member, proud to be a member because the things that they are doing with education, awareness, organ donor registration, to get the word out, to let everyone know that that one yes will make a difference. It can make a difference in someone's life. They are extremely extremely focused on awareness of how important organ registration is, education, getting information out to all spheres of our society, and how important it is, because there are so many myths associated with organ donation, and particularly in our demographic, it would who need kidneys more than anyone else. It's just amazing, that if we can dispel some of these myths and get the word out and raise awareness about organ donation, increase organ registration for organ donors, and be able to increase the odds for those who are on the transplant list, and to make sure that our organs don't go to heaven, because we need them here on earth. And I'm just so proud of Shirley, how she's been able to give back after receiving her lungs, that she just didn't go in the corner and say, wow, I got mine, and I'm good. But she has reached back, and she's giving to this organization with her heart, soul, and sweat. And it's just been amazing to be a member of EMET. And I think that all the other members in this group would just agree with me that it's just been amazing. And I've only been a member for a short while, but to look back at their track record from the time that they have incorporated up until now, they have done amazing things. And to have even corporate sponsors to come on board with them and to join their fight to increase, like I said, awareness, and to increase organ registration and information, to get the word out that we need more organs. And they've done an amazing job. And I'm just proud to be a member of EMET.
Look at Shirley smiling.
Oh. And I was just talking away and remembered that I had muted my mic. I said, oh, look at Brenda. But I was going back to the origin of, and that's why it was muted. I was going back to the origin of, and it's actually educating minorities about transplants. Nobody wants to say all that, and that's how we ended up with EMET. But Educating Minorities About Transplant is an organization, and I think it's a wonderful group of of people. It's not just one person. But in the organization, we have transplant recipients, we have caregivers, we have living donors, we just have tissue recipients now. There's just a part of the transplant community, every part involved with us. And I think it's important that when we go out in public, that people actually see those of us who have experienced a transplant. Because a lot of times, a lot of people, like when I got my transplant, you hear about it, but you don't exactly know what it is. So together, the organization, we come together and we show people. That's our campaign for this year. One yes makes a difference. See the faces, hear the stories, and feel the love, because that's what it's going to take. And like Brenda said, when we go out, we have three basic things. We want to spread awareness, we want to educate, and we want to register more people to be organ donors. It was originally started by from a multicultural task meeting where we heard the statistics about minorities. And we know for a fact that a lot of times, like she said, we are not eager to sign up to be an organ donor because of different myths. And because of that, we stand today. We started in 2015. We were incorporated in 2019. And the organization was started with a gentleman by the name of Walter Hill, whose wife, Beverly Hill, was also a double lung transplant recipient. And together, after that meeting, we came together and formed Educating Minorities About Transplants. All right.
Well, you answered a question, didn't even know it was there. So that I like that. let's work out on me. But the question, just to let you know, I don't know if you can see it on the screen, was it said to Miss Shirley Brill, I've been following you and want to know why this is so important to your organization. And you pretty much just answered and knocked it out the park right then. Um, so we'll let Jed answer the question. So again, what do you look for accomplishing with the organization?
You go ahead, George.
What did he say? He was fading in and out.
Oh, you go. The same thing that same question. What drew you to EMAT? And you go first.
See, I don't remember. I guess I met Shirley on Facebook, and I think anything that is educating minorities about anything, we need to be a part of. This happens to be about transplantation. And since I'd had my transplant for so long, I mean, I've been there and done that, spoken to that person and wrote the letter. But to see that someone else had started an organization down in Florida, and she's known now nationally, is fantastic to know. I don't know what it is. We as a people, as minority, we have these built-in fears. I remember when Shirley said, she didn't say she went to her primary care physician. She said she went to the emergency room. And I'm thinking a lot of us don't go to our doctor's office. You know, we wait until we get really sick and then we go to the emergency room. Thank God that there is an emergency room to go to. But in my case, I was 18 years old, just out of high school, when I had a bad cough, and my mom decided to take me to the hospital to see about it. And that's when they found out that my one kidney had was failing. And I ended up with pneumonia just a few weeks later, once they were able to transfer me from the community hospital down to George Washington University. I think my education began then. Like Shirley said, she was thinking the oxygen would just make the problem go away. Well, I thought once I started dialysis that this was just a treatment. This was going to make this problem with my kidney go away. And I'd been on dialysis for a little while, bless you, for a little while when I happened to mention something like that, and the nurses all turned around and told me, George, this is for the rest of your life. This is it. And, Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 8 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, leaving my house at 7 to get downtown in rush hour, 20-minute drive ordinarily, but it's an hour to do this. And I'm just 18, hadn't even started to live. So it was a very difficult thing, but I got a lot of education on dialysis from the doctors and nurses and so forth. But unbelievably, it's taken all of this time to find an organization like Shirley's, EMAT, that is doing an education specifically for minorities. I don't know any other organization that does that. Kidney Foundation, the National Kidney Foundation, different other organizations that are out there for different organs. I don't know anybody that works specifically with minorities. And so EMAT is really in my mind, a groundbreaking organization.
And just the fact that you don't remember the reason why you joined lets me know that you in it for real, because 9 times out of 10 people remember, their reasonings for joining, an organization, because I have this agenda, that agenda. George's, I'm just trying to get it done, which is something I can respect 100%.
She might have threatened me. I'm not sure. But I mean, Shirley, I've come to know her over the last year or so, and you know, she being an educator, you know how to talk, you know how to break things down so that everybody can understand them, and I've noticed that about her. So I really appreciate listening to her, and I have learned things from her. She doesn't know that, but I'm not going to tell her. But she's muted. She can't hear any of this, right?
Not anymore. Lean
She's
in.
muted. She can hear
But
you, but she can't hear her.
oh God. Well, but it's important. I remember, I mean, I've gone to so many churches and so many health fairs and schools and everything to educate. And when someone says, well, God didn't tell me to do that, well, you know, I can come back with 20 scriptures where it says he did tell you to do that, but we're trained not to be what's the
Right.
word uh, you know, to fight against someone's own opinion or whatever. And so I said, okay, fine. But I think Shirley's gotten a unique way of getting the word across. She's had the little event in August that I couldn't go to because I had a heart attack at the transplant games. Um, I was supposed to fly there and speak and then go back to Baltimore and drive myself home, but that it didn't work that way. God saw it took me a different direction. But still, she kept in touch. And that was important for me. So at some point, I'm going to go down there and speak to whomever, just that, and then I can get some peach cobbler because that seems to be the only way.
Cobbler.
That's a great reason in my book.
Yeah.
Peach cobbler, yeah,
That's what
that's a great reason.
I made my first tray a few weeks ago because I got tired of hearing about it, and it just didn't taste. It didn't taste like Georgia or North Carolina, or South Carolina.
Not that good in a peach cobbler.
I don't know what I did, but I did my best. And but it is so
That's all that
incredibly.
matters.
That's it. It is so incredibly important that we do educate minorities. You know, we consume, I believe, 30% of the organs in the country. So we're told. I don't know
Yep.
because, you know, but
32.8, I believe.
32.8. Okay, that's close. And
Mhm.
but yet we still have people that there was a bunch of my friends came to my house 2 weeks ago because they hadn't seen me and they were concerned and I hadn't been out. And so they drove here from Philly and Delaware and Eastern Shore to come see me. And we sent my blood pressure machine, which is sitting right here next to me, and we sent it around the table while we were sitting here talking. And one of the guys' blood pressure was 178/80. And I said, are you on medication? Are you taking your medication? Don't let me get started at my table. You know, you've medication. You can't just decide you're not going to take it because you feel good. And unfortunately, we as a people, we do. Our hair falls out. Oh well, you know, we stop taking our medication. We become sexually dysfunctional, I guess. We stop taking our medication. And meanwhile, we're doing harm to our bodies and we're not following up with our doctors until suddenly you have 20% kidney function, so or lung function or heart function. You know, so it's important to educate specifically minorities. And I won't say anything else.
Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely. Jan?
Well, Shirley and I met through a friend we have in common. And Shirley got in touch with me after learning that I was a 3-time tissue recipient. And we had a long talk that first day, and we talked about how important it is for everybody to understand that donation and transplantation isn't just about the 7 vital organs, which is what most people think. It's what I thought. It really wasn't until I was on the phone the night my husband died with someone from New England Donor Services, who was the organ procurement organization that helped me. And she had called said, well, I know Paul is a donor. And I said, but he's been dead for like 6 hours, and she said, oh my goodness, no, we can recover all kinds of tissue and his heart valves, which surprised me because his heart was what killed him. And, and so that was when I really learned about it, even though I had previously been a recipient. And the reason that I didn't think of myself as a tissue recipient until after Paul died and I started learning more about it was because my surgeon, who was a world-renowned hand surgeon, used the improper terminology when he told me about my surgeries. He said I would be getting cadaver bone and cadaver tendon. That puts an entirely different image in your head, I think, than what it should be, which is someone made a choice to check that box on his driver's license or whatever, or his family made a decision to give you this amazing gift. So part of my platform is educating people in the medical community about how important it is to use the right terms. Don't say harvest, it's recover. And it's donor, it's not cadaver. So I was very honored that Shirley got in touch with me and wanted me to be able to talk about tissue donation, because so many people really just don't know that by checking that box, you can give hundreds of donations. And and it's just a wonderful thing. So I'm delighted to be part of EMAT and to be in this wonderful community. And I look forward to doing whatever I can do to help further the mission.
Awesome.
If I can,
Awesome. Yep.
may I say something quickly? I've been a nurse for over 30 years, and the majority of my career was spent in the recovery room, post anesthesia care unit. And oftentimes that was the operating room was the place where recovery of organs took place. And as Jan said, many years, the incorrect terminology was used, cadaver bone. I can tell you many times that I recovered patients who had knee replacements, tendon replacements, finger, joint replacements, and that was a terminology that was used, cadaver bone. But it should be used, as she said, donor instead of cadaver. And that way we are more educated and able to honor those persons who did say yes. And without those tissues, those person, and especially cornea, this gift of sight would not be given to many people unless those who check that box to say yes and donate their corneas to many people. They wouldn't be able to see today without those corneas. And it's a big misconception in the medical community, particularly on the part of the surgeon. It rolls down from the head. If the surgeons don't make the change, then it doesn't go down to nurses, to technicians, surgical technologists, and of that nature. teacher. So it has to start somewhere, and I applaud you, Jan, for your quest to try to make that change in the medical community. And perhaps we need to propose a bill to make that change, because it definitely needs to be done. And without it starting somewhere, with a organization behind it, such as EMET, this won't get done. But definitely the medical community needs to make a change, so that those who have given their who said yes and given their tissues, so persons can see, persons can now, like you, have the ability to move their hands, their joints, and tissue. Such as the gentleman Chelsea who had the facial transplant. Tissue needed to be done for that. So yes, these donors need to be recognized.
Thank you.
There was a questionnaire sent out years ago to donor family members, and they all, not unanimously, of course, but the majority of the people did not like the term cadaver. A cadaver is not a deceased donor. That deceased donor is usually has been declared brain dead, cardiac death perhaps, but they're still in the hospital receiving blood and so forth to keep their organs viable. A cadaver is something in the freezer, something that has been passed on, and they're storing the body for the family to come or whatever. But so they all said they did not like the term cadaver. They want deceased donor. And so I do too as well. I still run into people that keep saying that. I said, no, deceased donor. And a lot of them did not like being corrected, not really correcting and educating. The term is deceased donor. Yeah.
Yes.
And I'd like to jump in before we close out and make another statement about our name, because a lot of people have some questions.
Oh, we're not done yet.
Although the name of the organization is Educating Minorities About Transplants, it is not just a group for minorities. The group is for anyone. So we want to make that clear. Anyone is welcomed, whether they're here in the city of Jacksonville with us, whether they're on Facebook, whatever the case may be. We love everybody and we want to educate everybody. So please don't let that name fool you. You're welcomed with us.
Didn't fool me.
So give us
Didn't fool you, George.
some individual questions. So
yes, sir.
What made you become a dialysis nurse?
I was relatively new to nursing at the time. I had worked as I got my degree in nursing believe it or not, in 1979, and I worked on a general nursing floor for about 3 years. And a friend of mine had transferred to a freestanding dialysis unit, and she told me about it and encouraged me to change from just regular general nursing to dialysis nursing, and I did that. And I worked in a dialysis unit, freestanding dialysis unit, for probably 5 years, and then I went back to become a recovery room nurse, and I found that was something that I really enjoyed doing. But throughout my career, I always found that I would drift back to a dialysis unit somewhere and work as needed in an acute dialysis unit in the hospital where I worked. Oftentimes they would have a need in the acute unit within the intensive care unit, and have a need to dialyze patients that were in intensive care and needed acute dialysis, and I would oftentimes fill that role. So dialysis nursing just remained a part of me throughout my career, even though, like I said, my main career was in the post-anesthesia care unit. I always kept my hands in dialysis. And something that really stood out to me, and it's just a poignant memory. I can remember many times dialyzing patients, African American patients that came through the emergency room that had no idea that they were in renal failure until they were in the emergency room. And I would get called in the middle of the night having to dialyze them. And my renal function was actually less than theirs. And I was dialyzing this patient, and I'm like, wow, I was blessed to be, I say blessed, and to me, I look back now, it was a blessing to have renal insufficiency for about 24 years before I became end stage. But yes, a lot of times these people, who would have high blood pressure, as we know, it's a silent killer, but they kill their kidneys and they had no idea. And they would in the emergency room with blood pressures 200 over 100, and their kidneys were shot. And I ended up dialyzing them, and they had no idea they were in renal failure. But yes, that's how I ended up being a dialysis nurse, just because of my transfer there and invited me to come over. And it's always been just a part of my dialysis career from the time, probably since 1984. My son, who is 38 now, was 3 months old when I first became a dialysis nurse.
Wow. So these stories are interesting because I always learn I'm in that same situation. If you talk about it, what is the reason that your first transplanted kidney rejected dialysis treatments?
My first kidney failed um, as a result of the kidney itself. 3 months after my transplant, I found myself having my first kidney infection. Many people may not know this, but the anatomy, your anatomy changes with a kidney transplant. The kidney is not where your native kidneys are. It's placed retroperitoneal, actually in the front of your abdomen. So your kidney is very close to your bladder now. So I was found to have urinary retention, and oftentimes I would retain urine and it would reflux into my transplant, causing me to have infections. And I would have infections probably every 4 to 6 weeks, being admitted to the hospital, having to have IV antibiotics. And that was an ongoing thing for a long, long time. Because of the need for IV antibiotics, which are oftentimes metabolized through the kidney, that was one of the major factors that played into my kidney rejecting over time. I dealt with infection for probably 8 years. And it wasn't until recently, maybe I think it was last March, on an incidental finding, that it was discovered I had a hole in my colon. And that hole was a contributing factor to bacteria being introduced into my system that was contributing to these infections. As a result of that, at the time I was on peritoneal dialysis, and the need to have a portion of my colon removed required going through my abdomen and my peritoneum, which meant I could no longer do peritoneal dialysis. That caused me to have to transition to hemodialysis. That transition took place last July. I had the surgery in July, and I began training for hemodialysis, and I chose to do it at home. Fortunately, I converted a bedroom to a treatment room, and I'm in that treatment room now, and you all may be able to see, this is my, if I can capture it, that's my home dialysis machine that I do my home treatments in 3 times a week. I do it myself with the help of my son, who is my care partner, but I do home dialysis. And the reason for that transition was because I could no longer do peritoneal dialysis. And so I'm currently doing home hemodialysis, and it's given me quite a bit more flexibility. Peritoneal, I was doing 7 days a week, 10 hours a night. With this form of dialysis, I have to do 12 hours a week, and I do 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Friday, 4 hours a day. So it's given me quite a bit more flexibility. But yeah, it was a change. Quite a bit more training, a lot of technical aspects go into it as far as having to learn the machine, maintenance for the machine, and things like that. But that was the reason for having to transition from one to the other.
Wow. Yeah, we definitely need to talk. A lot of our stories are very similar. Um, so let's move on. So Jan, before we get and please correct me. I'm sure the story that Shirley was probably from a while ago. Um, but 100 donations of nerve, skin, and bone tissue and 2 corneas. His donations also been used for spinal fusion, knee, shoulder surgeries, breast reconstructions, amongst other procedures. Wow. That's I can't put that
Yeah,
into words. I'm honestly
yeah.
it,
Yeah, it's
it
closer to
gets me
125, I think.
choked
And
up, and I'm not made
yeah,
related or nothing like that. Man, it's still
sometimes the numbers change. Sometimes,
wow.
um,
That's
and
amazing.
for some of the transplants, I have details. That all
Um,
depends on the surgeons sending in their cards telling about the donors. So I know that people have had ACL repairs, people have had the spinal fusions, the Olive Paul's 7 skin tissue donations went toward breast reconstruction after mastectomies, and some of his nerve tissue went to women who had undergone that same type of procedure who were then going through a resensitization surgery. So yeah, he was actually sponsored by Axogen, a nerve bank in Florida, on as a Florograph honoree on last year's Donate Life float in the Rose Parade. So he represented nerve tissue donors, and it was an amazing experience to be in Pasadena for that event. It was absolutely amazing and a tremendous honor. But I met a ton of donor families, as you can imagine, and we all had that conversation about the improper terminology and the different ideas that it puts in your head. And there's not one person that I met or have gotten to know in my journey who doesn't agree with that.
Mhm.
It's just, I mean, it's a little thing. It seems like a little thing, but it's a big thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
right,
So
right.
yeah, I met one woman whose son donated, aside from his cornea, 542 tissue donations.
Wow.
One person.
That's incredible.
Yep. So,
So no, go ahead, go ahead.
oh no, go, you go.
So when you were interviewed, you said it was common sense. Who wouldn't check an organ donor? Well, as you may know, not that many people check box. So
Right.
exactly how common is the common sense in that equation? Because it seems like people kind of like they double guess themselves, or and they sit there and they try to figure out what do I want to do, or they think about all these myths that are out there. What do you think really is the reason why people outside of the myths that people don't check that box when asked to?
That's a really good question. I don't know. Why? I mean, my husband used to say, we met long after we had checked our boxes, But anytime we had a conversation about donation, if it happened to come up, he would say, "What kind of psycho wouldn't check the box?" um, but a lot of, I mean, he was 16, I was 17 when we checked that box.
Oh,
Perhaps older people don't just think, "Oh yeah, well that's a great idea," like a kid does. I don't know. Shirley, any of you guys have ideas about that?
well, I'll
You,
say,
you know, that's kind of where I have an assumption as to that maybe it's up to us to get to the younger ones before they get all this information, all these myths and things of that nature thrown at them, growing up, becoming adults, going through, getting jobs and stuff like that, and being exposed to all this negative information. And that's when they're learning to find out who they are, make their own decisions, get process new information in a way that they can process it without really anybody tell. Their parents, of course, have those, but for the most part, at that age, we all know we really shutting parents out. Do what I'm doing and get through life, and you go ahead and do what you know. So I think that may be really our best bet to the younger ones. And that's throughout time. Period. It doesn't matter now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, we may need to go and get a hold of the young people while they're young, and really kind of into terms with who are making their own decisions.
And I'd like to add there also that I know here in Jacksonville, our local OPO, Life Quest, they are involved with going in during driver's ed, some of the schools that will let them in. And that way we go in sometimes when I volunteer and share stories to let them also see the benefits of when they check that box, yes. So when they go in to get their actual driver's license, they'll have a little background to see the difference that it makes. And I know also there's an organization with young adults on college campuses, also called SODA. And that will get the young adults more involved and hopefully spread awareness for that age group.
We have a similar program here in Gainesville at our Life Quest is our procurement program, and our community outreach director, she goes to the high schools and does presentations to the high school students there. I'm an ambassador as well as my donor, and we do organ donation awareness at different organizations, churches, women conferences, and things of that nature. But high school students have been a main focus, just as you said, to get the word out to the young people before they have a chance to be tainted, so to speak, by the myths that are often generated from one generation to the other, down to the next in their families, that would somehow make them have decisions that would turn them away from organ donation. But I think education is a huge factor in helping to make that decision. But reaching them early is going to be a major factor in increasing awareness in organ donation.
And I think another important thing is just simply to have the conversation. A lot of times when we're sitting around talking, people don't like to talk about death, and we know that's a fact, but that's something that's going to happen to all of us at some point in time. So it's important that we start now having the conversation around the dinner table, at picnics, at barbecues, or wherever the case may be. Begin talking about it. Even if you don't want to be an organ donor, begin talking about that also. So when that time comes, your family won't be faced with making a decision that would be against, what you really want.
It is one of those hard conversations that we don't like to have, even as a people, we don't like to discuss what do we want to have done, while before we leave the earth, when we're at that point where we can't make the decisions for ourselves. This could be included in that conversation. Do you want to be an organ donor? And we haven't checked that box, we can include that in, living wills as our healthcare surrogates and make can know that and can make that decision for us. And it won't be so hard on them because we make the decision for them before the time comes.
All right, all right. So then my last question for you um, is you mentioned earlier that Paul was honored on the lifeboat. How was that experience to be others like yourself that may have lost a loved one but was able to give that gift of life in the process?
It was unforgettable. It was absolutely heartwarming and beautiful. And the event actually started on the 4th anniversary of his death. But I was able to celebrate him and all the other heroes. I also met recipients because on the float, they have living donors who walk with the float, and then they have recipients who ride on the float. So I met people from all different aspects of donation, and it was just like we were a big family. The hotel that we were staying in was 95% people there for that particular event. So, I got to meet the woman who created Paul's fluorograph, and she's become a good friend. I was so impressed by the entire experience that I was delighted to be accepted to volunteer to create 2 fluorographs for this year's float. So I went out to LA in October, and I created 2 fluorographs that were on the float, which this year won the top prize in the entire parade. Ours got the Extraordinaire Award, and ours was an amazing float too. But anyway, I'm going to do that as long as I'm able to, and I'm going to go out and be part of the week leading up to the parade as much as I can. I couldn't because of airline issues this time, but it's the kind of thing where you just want to go back and and just rekindle these relationships that you've made, and people are there who are doing the exact same thing. The volunteers, the ambassadors are connected to donation in some way, and it's just a very, very special time. And I was incredibly honored that Paul was chosen.
Yeah, you're one of the few. Well, I mean, that I know personally. I have a good friend, Georgia, know her, Sarah Castro. She's a 32-year heart transplant recipient, but she's also a newly kidney transplant recipient as well.
Oh, wow.
And her story it gets me emotional because I knew her kidney donor personally, which was her 4-year-old cousin. I met him 8 months before he passed away at the transplant games. Um, and just know that funny play around type person. We became, real good friends. And again, he fortunately passed away. It'll be, I believe, 4 years this year in March 5th. Um, and took Sarah. She happened to just be at the hospital that day. She went and got tested. Found out she was a match. Had her transplant. That day or like early in the morning, the next morning. Um, and they also are heavy legacy, donate life, that. So,
Yeah.
definitely glad that you were able to expect that. I think it's kind of very similar to the experience that me and George have at the transplant games, to just around recipients, donors, supporters, caregivers that go through this journey that we go through, pretty much every day of our life. You know, it is just it's get the chance to experience it. I beg you to go because it's an experience that you have to be able to take in and do at least once. You know, I had the blessing of being able to be sponsored to go 2008. UC ended up blessing me and paying for myself to go. It was in Pittsburgh that year, and then I went in 2018 in Utah, and now last year as a non-competitor just to work with the foundation I work with. But if you get the chance, and they have a bunch of stuff there for donors as well.
Mm-hmm.
Will bunch of other a donor tribute ceremony and everything like that. That is it's a wonderful time for everybody involved within organ transplantation. So thank you, Jen, for your time. Greatly appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. I
Mr. Frank,
appreciate it. So
Mr. Franklin, uh, 46 years, man. 47. God is good, brother. God is.
Yeah, yes.
I have one main question for you. And this is really probably for myself and for Brenda. But what's your secret, man? I mean, 46 years isn't something that's just known out there in the world, man. What? No, I'm just playing. I have more than one question.
Well,
But first
go-
out of high school, you found out you were born with one kidney. Why did it take to find that out, or is that education within the article that you did?
no, it takes that long because I've lived 47 years with one, and you wouldn't know it unless you had to go to the hospital to get an X-ray. That's the only way you would know that you have one kidney or you have three kidneys or two, is to have some kind of X-ray or something. Blood work wouldn't show it. And I happened to have a bad cold, and they did a chest X-ray, and that's when they realized that I only had one kidney. I was born with one kidney. A lot of people are born with one kidney and never know unless they have some sort of X-ray or sonogram or something to find find that out. I don't know that there's a secret to longevity, but back in 75, and I'm going to turn my light on here. Back in 1975, the matches had to be spot on.
Right.
Just like when Sarah went to get her kidney transplant, they didn't have to match as closely as they had to back in 1975, or for people that were transplanted a couple of years before me in different states. The only medicine they had was prednisone and azathioprine, Imuran. That was it. And so your transplant really had to be a very good match. I nearly turned down this kidney because the first one never worked, and I was depressed about it. And I'd gone 6 whole months without any surgery. And the previous 3 years, every 3 or 4 months, I was being cut somewhere. Two shunts, a fistula, a nephrectomy, kidney in, kidney out. So I was happy those 6 months. And when I got beeped to come back, my doctor literally had to sit on the side of my bed and tell me, do not turn down this kidney. This is your kidney, George. And well, you said that the first time, So, I mean, I was young. I was just 21 years old. So I had to sign the papers, not my mom. And I told him, if this kidney doesn't work, I'm going to haunt you the rest of your life. And so all of the whole first 40 years, oh, good. My low battery thing just came on. The first 40 years of my transplant, I was taking azathioprine and prednisone. And because I developed the gout when my kidney function decreased 5 years ago, it wasn't able to clear the uric acid from my blood. My doctor wanted to put me on a gout medicine. So he took me off of azathioprine. I think it was 3 days before my 45th anniversary, and put me on one of these new drugs, mycophenolate, Celsep. So I was very nervous about
Cellcep's
it. But
not that new, because I was on
well,
Cellcept when I had my first transplant.
and that was what, 10 years ago?
No,
it
it
was
should. I wish I was saying 15, but it was 2007.
Yeah.
okay. So it was new. I knew about it. I knew about Rapamune. I knew about cyclosporin. But for me, being on the same drug for 45 years and having to
Mhm.
change, I was so. But my doctor assured me that, George, the chemistry is very similar. You won't even notice the change, and I haven't. So my secret, I guess, would be to take your meds. Too many people I know have lost their transplant simply because they stopped take. And I'll get mad and break this glass dining room table because they simply stopped their medication.
Taken.
It makes absolutely no sense. Someone has passed away or gave you a living kidney, a living donor kidney, and you decide you're not going to take your med. Well, it makes me sleepy, or it makes my hair thin, or I'm getting blotches on my skin. Well, wait till you get 68, 60, 70, you'll get blotches everywhere. So that frustrates me. But all I've done was to make sure that I took my medicine. I've eaten pretty much anything I wanted to eat, drank pretty much anything I wanted to drink. I've got some brand new cookies over there right now I made yesterday, and chocolate chip cranberry. And
I need
but
you to send me.
that's the main thing. I will. Don't tip me. But the main thing is you've got to take your medicine. You got to get exercise. You try to do the best you can to live your life. I think my greatest example of a transplant recipient living their life is Isabel Stencil. That young lady has been all over the world with her double lungs. And right now she's suffering from cancer. Everyone knows it. And yet she's still showing, here we are hiking the Sierra Nevada mountains, or, we're over here down in, what's the thing in the big hole in the ground? Whatever it is.
Grand Canyon.
They're just everywhere. She and her sister were probably singularly responsible for an increase in transplantation in Japan. They didn't have any insurance over there to cover transplants. People were in their video, The Power of Two. It shows people on the corner trying to raise money for their lung transplant, for their heart transplant. And they were both fortunate to get their double lungs. Unfortunately, her twin sister passed, but not until after she had enjoyed her life for many, many years. So you've got to take your medicine. You don't stay in the house and just, well, I can't work anymore. I can't do this anymore. You keep your job. You find a job, and you get out of the house and you go to work for 20 or 30 years. And that's what I did. I that, and the fact that I'm just blessed beyond anybody's imagination. 47 years. I'm still amazed. I'm still amazed. At the games, the day after I saw you, and what's his name?
Edward. Yeah.
In Atlanta. That's when I had my heart. It's not a heart attack. What is it called? Heart failure. and
Mm.
no clue, none whatsoever. And I'm walking across the pool deck, and I fall into the arms of a captain of another team who happened to be an EMT.
Mm.
And Brenda, you'll love this. I mean, there were two nurses that were on the pool deck by just because they were there. They were there with friends that were swimming at the games, and there was a doctor there that was again happened to be there. And you had two lifeguards, and they had to use both of the AEDs to get my heart started. So I have learned in this 47-year journey that God is ultimately responsible. You know, God is ultimately responsible. And for me to, like you, I was sponsored to go to the games. We hadn't had many fundraising because of COVID. So the National Kidney Foundation paid my airfare there, and they paid my airfare to Florida. And then EMAT was going to pay my airfare back to Baltimore. That's not the way it worked. But for all of the things to come into place, I didn't have hotel money. I had $600. I was supposed to stay with someone in a house. Well, that someone got sick and couldn't come to the games. So she had to go to the house. And I called Bill Ryan, and Bill, I don't see how I can get there. I can come, but I can only stay 2 days. I've got $600. That's all I got. And he said, no, we've got a hotel room we've already paid for. Now, I'm seeing God in so much of this after the fact that, just come on and stay in that hotel room. Don't worry about paying us. We've already paid for it. Don't worry about it. And so I've got a hotel room. I've got away to California. And then the day after I saw you guys at the convention center was the day I was at the swimming pool. And that's when I dropped like a rock on the pool deck, falling into someone's arms who started CPR immediately. And it was just like the guy on the football team in Buffalo. He tackled, he stood up, and boom, down to the ground he went. Same thing, cardiac failure. But that's all I've done. I've stayed active. I've tried to attend the games. I would ask everybody, make sure that's something that you try to do, transplant or not. They have certain things that people on dialysis can compete in. Okay, there's always a dialysis center. The CAP team managers know exactly where they are. Transportation is normally provided there. And you would compete only against people that are also on dialysis, and in your gender and in your age bracket. So, and I can't see Brenda's picture very well because it's no bigger than my thumb. But when she said she'd been a dialysis nurse, I've been a nurse for 30 some years. I'm thinking, when did she start in the crib? She only looks about 30 or 40. Looking, I said, did you say 35 years?
30 years.
Huh?
I started my nursing degree. I received in 1979, and when I was forced to retire because it wasn't my choice, I had put in right at 27 years of nursing. I'll be 65 in May.
What?
Yes.
Oh my goodness! I don't see it. I'm 68. I just don't see it. I guess. Well,
I don't look like what I've been through. Is what I've been told. I've been through a lot.
I can imagine different. I mean, I started out on peritoneal. It was a new thing that they were trying. They felt that maybe my kidney would start back up. And so they stuck me 3 different days, once each day, 3 days in a row. I bled like a stuffed pig.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm everywhere because they hit a artery or vein or something each time. And you're laying on the bed, they're pushing down and pushing down and pushing. It feels like they're shoving a pole through your entire body, but they're simply trying to get through your chest muscles and your abdomen muscles and all. And it was horrible. They didn't have the temperature control. They heated the bottles, and they were huge glass bottles in those things that they used to deliver milk in 100 years ago, little metal boxes, and they'd sit out front your door, and they heated up the water in that and then tried to get the water at a certain temperature. And when it flowed in you, it caused cramps because it was always too warm. It was,
wow.
yeah. And then hemo after that. But that was, been there, done that kind of thing. It's, and I'm praying now you all can join me in that, because my kidney is slowing down. I had my blood work done this evening or this afternoon, and rushed home for this. And then I knew I was expecting a call at 4:00, so I didn't know how. But my GFR is hovering around 20. It was 22 in this February. It was 22 last month, but it was 26 in November. So we're hoping that up this month. And yeah, 22 is life sustaining. We just don't want it to go any
lower.
Yeah.
Higher. Yeah.
Shirley's smiling. What's she smiling about? I told you I don't have glasses on.
So, George, last question for you. Outside of the stale medication, things of that nature, what do you tell that newly transplanted kidney recipient as they're in recovery? They just got a transplant. They expect, again, I'm sure they can drill on, make sure they take medications and stuff.
The last newly transplanted person had already had a transplant. He got one when he was 4 years old. He kept it from his mother. He kept it till he was 18. And his mother called me, "You need to call your son." I said, "What's up?" And I see him holding a picture of a baby on Facebook. Now, I know his mom and dad had that conversation before, but I went down to the hospital, and him, Austin Lee. And, he said, no, it's not mine. It's not mine. Okay, because conversation now. You're not, marriage first, okay? And then you want that to be for the rest. Sometimes things happen. But so since I moved here 11 years ago, the only person I've been able to encourage as a new recipient is a gentleman that lives here named James, and he got a living donation from his mother's elementary school classmate, and they had kept in touch over the years, and so he got a kidney from her classmate, and she knew about me being in this town. And she contacted me, and I've been able to keep him encouraged. He was very small in the beginning. He was being bullied at school. I told her, all you got to do is get my name on the visitors list. I'll go up there and straighten him out. I'll follow him all through. Tell everybody I'm his bodyguard. Y'all not gonna mess with him. And he's doing well now. And he has a disease called cystinosis. And Brenda, you probably know that it's an illness that attacks your organs, and it's difficult. But he has kept the kidney now. As a matter of fact, I believe this is his 5th year. I have it in my calendar, but I believe it's his 5th year. But I would tell a newly transplanted person that, one, if you're young, take your medicine, eat, and enjoy life. you know, don't think that there's not anything that you can't do. I know some recipients that have climbed mountains, they've forded every stream, they've done everything they needed to do in life to appreciate that gift. Okay. When you all were talking about reaching the young people, I really think it's the older people, the middle-aged people we need to reach. I think everybody's group goes into the schools, and young people have a different mentality on death. One, they think they're going to live forever, but they are signing up at the Department of Motor Vehicles, at the DMVs. They're signing up in record numbers. It's the ones that have grown older and are set in their ways that we can't seem to agree to organ and tissue donation. Especially, we're in church. Well, God didn't tell me to do that. Well, in many different scriptures, he did, but we're trained not to debate with the people. But young people seem to be much more open to organ and tissue donation than their parents. So, yeah. So, but I do try to encourage any recipient people here on dialysis. They've asked me to come in and do bingo. So I may end up doing that soon. And, but that's it. Yeah.
All right, George. Well, greatly appreciate you. Before we wrap it up, just want to, 2 3
Yes.
3 minutes, some words of encouragement to anyone transplant similar to yours in general, on dialysis. What do you heart? We'll start with Shirley.
Was that me?
Yep.
Perhaps not.
You said.
It was breaking up a little bit. I'm not sure if it was for Shirley or for me, but you mentioned dialysis. I'm on dialysis. Okay, Shirley.
Well, Shirley's little roommate is over here chit-chatting. Let's see if I can get through. Okay, I think so. Perhaps not.
It's all right. We deal with this every week with the Farrell dog, so it's okay.
I don't know. But anyway, I would just encourage everybody who's trying to get listed for whichever type of transplant you need. Just make sure you do your own legwork. Don't depend on other people to tell you things. Start researching information for yourself. If you need help, contact somebody who's already gone through what you're going through. That's another thing we do with educating minorities about transplants. But wherever you are, find somebody to talk to who's experienced it already. Never feel like you're going through anything alone. Contact someone. Be educated. Trust what your physicians say. And I know a lot of times, we try to get advice from other people. That's good. That's fine. But that's an opinion. Actually go with what your doctors and follow their directions.
Thank you. Brenda?
Speaking from the perspective of a dialysis patient, the biggest thing I would say is not to view it as a death sentence. Initially, coming from being a dialysis nurse and seeing my patients oftentimes come in and not get any better, that was the view that I had, and I had to change my perspective and began to look at dialysis as being a lifeline until I received that second call. I've been listed officially on the transplant list since 1994, but I had a living donor, which was a friend of mine, and I received that gift of life in 2012. But since that kidney failed, I'm now relisted again uh, on the transplant list. And being on dialysis now, I've had to, as I said, change my perspective and learn to live with dialysis and make sure that I have a life. I'm very active in organizations. I'm now the founder of a women's support group called A Grace to Be. Because of the many things that I've been through in my life, I feel that it's all relevant to women's issues today. We had our first meeting on Tuesday, and it's my way of giving back to women, and also to be able to help pay forward the things that I've experienced. So I'm not just sitting around, doing my treatments 3 times a week. I'm trying to give back to society. I'm going on an Alaskan cruise in June because I have to have a care partner. My donor is we're going together, and she'll be assisting me with my treatments while I'm there. I encourage you to live your life to the fullest every day, to the best, to the fullest that you can. This is, like I said, a lifeline. It's a second chance of life until you get that call. I also encourage those who are on dialysis, to reach out to your nephrologist if they haven't come to you, to reach out and say, hey, listen, I want to be worked up for a transplant. Make sure that I am on that list so that I can, even live my life to more than I'm living it now. I look forward to when that call comes to me, that when that one yes is my yes. And so I think it's very important, that even on dialysis, be compliant. That's looked at when you are being considered for a transplant. They want to make sure you're doing your treatments. They want to make sure you're taking your medications the way you're supposed to. You're keeping your doctor's appointment. All those things are factors that are considered when time comes for transplant. So dialysis is not a death sentence. I look at it as a lifeline, a second chance until you're able to receive a transplant. And by all means, I encourage you to move forward to be listed on the transplant list, and you are able to again live your life even more. I have 5 grandchildren. I look forward to their graduation, their marriages, them growing up, and I'm just excited. I'm excited about life, and I think that's the most important thing we can do, is to be able to look forward to enjoying our life to the fullest.
Thank you, Brenda. Mr. Franklin.
One thing that no one mentioned, and I didn't hear but half of the question because you were breaking up, but and if I drop, it's because I can't find my charger for my phone. Is the double list. I got put out of a dialysis center once for talking to dialysis patients about double listing. You're listed in Florida. I guess you're in Florida somewhere. Where are you, Brenda?
I'm in Florida. I'm listed at Mayo. Right now, I'm in the process listed at another hospital, so I will soon be double listed.
Okay, but Jacksonville and Orlando are in the same region, so there's no point in doing that. You want to list outside of your current region, whatever region.
Yes, like Jacksonville and Miami, or Jacksonville and I think Tampa is outside of my region. Yes.
Okay, as long as it's outside of your region, that's where you want to list. And see, a kidney. Right. You can be there in a few hours. You can drive.
Exactly. Right.
Right. So double list, and the same thing for you, Philip, because just listing in one place, list in a different region, and you're cutting your time in half. Other people have been doing it for decades. Okay, and Instead of being on the list for 5 or 6 years, you're on there for 2 or 3, if that long. So
Hmm.
absolutely, positively double list. I think this has been an excellent program, Philip, and I've learned more about EMAT. And Brenda, I still don't see it. 60 anything, I don't see it.
It's God's grace. His grace. Cancer survivor, in and out of the hospital, I would say at least 100 times
My,
since 2012. Yes, it amazes me, yeah, what he's done. But I give him the glory.
absolutely, absolutely. And I do as well for all of my years, for the heart failure, the heart surgery I've had, replacing my aortic valve. Uh, uh, Doctor was taking out my gallbladder and nicked my liver, so they had to redo
Mhm.
surgery 2 weeks later. And so all of these things, we all are still here. So life is
Yes,
truly worth living. Yeah, Philip,
absolutely.
your time is soon, man.
Oh
It's been
yeah, most
amazing.
definitely. You know me, I'm definitely keeping the faith. You know, like I told you before, work never stops. You know, no matter how bad my situation goes, never stop advocating for organ donation, transplantation. It's the only thing that's kept me here on this earth outside of God's grace. So, it's definitely, I feel it is a obligation to do it. You know, to educate people. You know, and to just be there to tell my story, have other people tell their stories. Um, he said, I see a story as a resource, currently going through that situation because they may not have a clue very beginning of how to get through any type of situation, but can hear someone's story and go, okay, that's where I need to start at. Or I need to make
Right.
this turn here, make this turn there. You know, like I say, we may have all gotten to the same, to different streets and avenues to get there. Uh,
Right.
so, with that being said, thank you, ladies. Thank you, Mr. Franklin. Appreciate you for being on. I apologize for taking up almost 2 hours of your day. You know, it's been a great,
It's
great
been
show.
great. It's been
Um,
great. Yes. I applaud you,
Definitely
Philip, for
appreciate
what
it.
you're doing. Yes,
Thank
yes.
you. Thank you.
And
Thank
I
you.
thank you for the
Um,
invitation. And I thank the 3 guests for coming on also.
That's it. And I'm sorry I
Definitely,
had to put my
definitely.
phone on charge. So
It's okay. It's all right. The good thing it didn't happen to the end of the show, so it's all right. I know Mr. Could have been here. He's a Florida guy also. He's in the Tampa area, so you know, definitely I'm sure he'll be getting in touch with one of you, if not both of you, soon. Brenda and Shirley, and probably you, George, as well, just because he likes to get different perspectives and people like that. You know, he does his own LLC kidney care coaches, so look for it as well. So again, thank you the three, also Jan, for joining us. This Friday I'll be on Uncle Jeremiah's show. At
uh-oh.
I believe 8 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Pacific. So definitely look for that. It's gonna be a great show. Uncle Jen's been on the second chance as well. We had a great conversation that day, so definitely looking forward to that. So, with that being said, the next two events that we're taking chance is our World Kidney Day webinar on March 9th. That will be a presentation by Dr. Sharika Brookings and Chef Lana Carroll. And then we're going to have our FSGS conference on March 30th. We're in the end process of putting together, but it's pretty much done. The one thing that we're going to add is a patient panel, which will be with Chef Monica as well, Simone Washington, and Audrey Bella Langston. Definitely looking forward to that patient panel for sure. We'll have a nutritional side to it, as well as educational by two great nephrologists. So looking forward to those. Again, thank you, ladies. Franklin, appreciate you. and your time. We will see you all next week. God bless.
Thank you.
God
Thank
bless
you all.
everybody.
Bye,
God bless.
everyone.
Bye.
Shirley, call me.
Okay, George.
Okay.